We had these next two individuals on Fox and Friends first, and I am so moved by their story, specifically the story of the major I'm going to introduce to you. I want you to pay attention to this, and I want you to do what you can do. Talk to your congressman, write your representative, whatever you need to do in order to make this situation right. The individuals on your screen right now, the top is David Bull Gurfein, Marine, and the bottom, Major James Capers. It's been a privilege being introduced to you two gentlemen. And before we get into it, I want to tell you what Major James Capers' story is. I'm going to read from the Fox News website here because I think they set it out perfectly. Major James Capers served in the Vietnam War and saved 7 fellow Marines when his recon group was ambushed and outnumbered by the North Vietnamese in 1967. In and of itself, amazing story. I could stop right there, but I won't because you have to listen to the how. According to the sworn testimony of the surviving Marines, then Lieutenant Capers' unit was ambushed in the jungle with blasts from claymore mines inflicting devastating injuries on him and his men. Despite the blasts ripping open his stomach and breaking his leg, a heavily bleeding Capers kept command of his Marines and led to in holding off the enemy long enough for the medevac flight to arrive. Again, if I stop there, this story has gone from, well, that's heroic, to that's beyond heroic. But literally, it grows beyond comprehension with what I'm about to read. When the overloaded aircraft struggled to take off, Capers attempted to sacrifice himself by jumping from the helicopter and insisting that he be left behind until he was pulled back on board by the medevac crew chief. Capers received multiple gunfire wounds, 19 pieces of shrapnel in the firefight, continues to suffer from those wounds to this day. But due to his heroic actions, Capers and all of his Marines survived. That's the most heroic story that I have heard in the 250 years of our nation. And it's an honor to have you here, Major Capers. The reason we have you on is because we're trying to get you the Medal of Honor. And that's not happened yet. Do you have any idea why, Major?
It was a different era. The Vietnam War was not popular. And a lot of the Marines and sailors and soldiers like me didn't get the benefit like the troops from World War II and Korea. So I got passed over for the Medal of Honor.
I'm going to ask that question now to Major Gurfein. David Gurfein. I'm sure you have a different answer. That's a humble answer. What's your response, Gurfein? Bull. I call you Bull, so let's call you Bull.
That's fine. So, Todd, here's the thing, that Major Capers actually was nominated for the Medal of Honor, or at least came up for consideration when Major General Hockmuth, 58 years ago, visited Major Capers and his Marines. And like you, as you laid this out, that he hadn't heard of anything so heroic and intended to award Major Capers the Medal of Honor. And Major General Hockmuth was the commanding general of 3rd Marine Division in Vietnam. Unfortunately, a couple months later, he died in a helicopter crash, and with him, the Medal of Honor nomination. So it then fell to his detachment officer in charge, who didn't like Capers for whatever reason. And there was a lot of reasons he didn't. There was jealousy. There was some cowardice on the behalf of this individual. And Capers was a hero. And this other individual didn't lead combat missions because he had failed once before. And so Capers was there leading his Marines in Phu Loc. This other individual was not. And when he had to put in an award for Major Capers, he put him in for the Bronze Star with V. And I've actually written combat Bronze Stars with V. And I'll tell you, based upon the witness statements, that's a slap in the face. It's embarrassing. It's way beyond a Silver Star. This is definitely Medal of Honor material, as you've outlined. Well, the challenge came that without the ability to access information, because all of his missions were classified, that it wasn't until 2006 that this was even able to get a second review. And this is where the commanding general of 2nd Marine Division, now in 2006, Major General Williams, opened this up and said, well, why didn't Major Capers ever get the Medal of Honor? And as it turns out, he felt that he was deserving. And I talked to many of Major Capers' Marines, including his platoon sergeant, and I asked him, I said, Sergeant Yerman, do you believe Major Capers is deserving of the Medal of Honor? You were there at Foulac. He said, no, sir. He was deserving of 3. And he went on to tell me multiple stories of Major Capers' heroism. Now, what ended up happening was, with the best of intentions, the submission that initially went to the Secretary of the Navy included all of these actions as sort of an end of tour award. And that was procedurally incorrect, and it got kicked back. The next time it went up, again, it was procedurally incorrect. And so they kept trying to have this award evaluated, but it kept falling into bureaucratic morass and kept getting kicked back, sometimes justifiably, other times not. And within that time frame, the Marine Corps actually convened an awards board, and they came out and said Major Capers is deserving of an upgrade, and they gave him the Silver Star. But there was no minutes kept of that meeting, and so there was no way to really assess what happened. But we do have evidence that this same detachment commander who disliked Capers 58 years ago was now somehow colluding with the individual who was in charge of the awards branch and felt Capers should never get the Medal of Honor, and actually made very emotional pleas. And we've got witness statements to attest to this. So now we're here at this new situation, and there's a lot of misinformation. And I want to dispel one horrible myth that this is somehow a DEI award, and it's not. This is something that's 100% merit-based, and yet people are going to have perceptions. People are going to say, oh, well, he didn't get it because of racism, or he's only getting it because of DEI, and neither of those are necessarily true. What has to be focused on is purely the merit. This warrior is deserving of the Medal of Honor, and he's an American hero that should be celebrated by all.
Yeah, I don't know anybody, white, black, brown, any color, who did anything rising to anything even close to that level. And we are a country that is based off of the heroic actions of our men and women in uniform. That's the reason we have our freedom. And yet, this to me is the most striking example of somebody who deserves recognition. And Major Capers, you did receive this. This isn't necessarily, this is a job. This isn't necessarily recognition, but you were a central figure in the Ask a Marine program. A shot of you much younger, good-looking guy. I feel like I'm turning into Trump saying, what a good-looking guy. But this picture of you, man, you see that guy, you want to sign up for the Marines. And yet your country hasn't thanked you properly, the way they should. And I know that people like you don't do this for the awards. You do this because this is what you feel you had to do for the country. But it has to be a punch in the gut to have this be such a protracted process, to have to do these interviews, to basically, I don't want to use the word beg, because you're not begging, and you're an honorable man, and you definitely are not begging. But to have to go through so many hoops after this many years, since 1967, to be recognized. What goes through your mind when you think about all you have to do to have our nation say, yes, that is a Medal of Honor recipient?
Doesn't really bother me, because I've got my godson, Bull. He told the story better than I can. And he'll get it done. I don't worry about these types of things. It was a long time ago, and no matter what I can do now, it's not going to bring back all those wonderful young Americans that I lost in battle, and I couldn't bring their bodies home. So I'm grateful to survive it, and I'm grateful that Bull has taken over the challenge of telling the story. He tells it much better than I can. So, Bull, I appreciate it. You've done a good job with it, and I'm an honor to be here. So you can ask me whatever ask me any questions that you may have, but Bull has told a story.
Sure, understood. Bull, you have been relentless And I know that as somebody who's been on the receiving end of your relentlessness, and I'm thankful for that, because this is now the second opportunity I have had to bring Major Capers to, I don't want to call it my audience, but people that are watching or listening to what I'm doing at that point in time. Let's look forward, because you did a great recounting of looking back. Let's look forward. And I always like to make the joke that you can't get people in Congress a bipartisan resolution to say today is Thursday. I mean, that's how divided our country is right now. But you have bipartisan support. 47 members of Congress signed a letter to make sure that this wrong gets righted, that Major Capers gets the Medal of Honor. Where are we, and what needs to happen next to make sure this gets done?
Thank you for asking. So, first of all, I'm 100% confident, based upon President Trump's moral courage in handling various other situations, regardless of political perceptions, he will make the right decision. And I believe Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, will also support this, as will the Secretary of the Navy and the Marine Corps. However, before the president can make that decision, Congress as a whole has to pass this one administrative bill, which basically says we will waive this 5-year statute of limitations. And it's a relatively simple standalone bill, and it allows someone to receive the Medal of Honor beyond 5 years from their actions. Now, as we discussed, we do have a letter that went to the president, which I believe made him aware of the situation, and it was bipartisan. But to be clear, there were only 2 Democrats that signed on to that bill. Now, we believe that one of those 2 will champion or this letter, that one of those 2 will sign on or lead the push for this bill. And if it's a bipartisan, or ideally a bicameral bill, meaning both the House and the Senate get on board, this could be a relatively easy matter to where we make sure that Major Capers is recognized, and that President Trump can award Major Capers the Medal of Honor sometime in the near future, ideally within the next month or so. But Congress has to act, and that's what's so important, that we get this bill through so that the president can make the right decision.
This seems like an absolute no-brainer. This might be the easiest thing that Trump and Hegseth have to do over the course of their next 4 years. So let's get it done. Major Capers, I asked you this question when you were on Fox and Friends first, and I'm going to ask it to you again, because I thought your answer floored me. And I'm going to ask you the question again. But when this happens for you, you're 87 years old, so I don't mean to be morbid, but we are running out of time somewhat. But when this ultimately happens for you and you do receive the Medal of Honor, what are you going to do?
I'm going to Arlington National Cemetery and talk to my wife and my son who are buried there. They made the sacrifices while I was off defending the country. Now they're home, and I want to go and honor them. And the men that lie in Arlington, the one that stood beside me and fought with me and shared the blood with me, that would be my first duty, and to honor the country that gave me the opportunity. I was given a lot of opportunities, and now I want to make sure that the country knows that I appreciate it. It hasn't always been easy.
Appreciate it. We're the ones who should be appreciating you. While we've been doing this segment, my little one just, I'm working from home today, doing this from home, and my little one just walked in, and I know that our freedom as Americans wasn't on the line necessarily in the Vietnam War. There wasn't concern that the Vietnamese were going to invade New Jersey and take over my family and just destroy my lineage. But the fact of the matter is, it's this mindset, it's this ability of people like Major Capers to put service above self in a way that is rare, I think, in today's day and age. it's almost not seen at all in today's day and age. But I can't imagine it was very common even during the Vietnam War, even during World War II. And yes, we do tell these stories. But what Major Capers did is so far beyond that. And to have that attitude that he has now, I'm almost embarrassed the way I'm talking about it, Bull. I feel like I'm not even doing it justice, because I know sitting here, there is a 0% chance that I could rise to the moment of that man right there. And let's be brutally honest, Bull, a lot of those folks in Congress, they couldn't rise to that moment either. Maybe there are a few that came close and that have served our country admirably, but we know that we owe Bull a debt of gratitude. We owe Major Capers a debt of gratitude, because he did the things that we're not willing to. And even now, at 87 years old, he has an attitude that embodies the American spirit, but is something that I know I couldn't do, Bull. Talk about that. Talk about what a unique guy this is, just in our American history. Because I don't think we're emphasizing that enough. I feel like we're focusing too much on process, and we need to focus more on this man, Bull.
I appreciate you opening that up. And so you're right. Look, I spent 25 years serving as a Marine, multiple combat tours. And I'll tell you, if you condensed all of that, it wouldn't have risen to the level of heroism of 1 minute of Major Capers' actions in Phu Loc. And so I'm humbled. We all should be humbled. Yet, if you look at the history of Major Jim Capers and why it's such an amazing American story. Here's an individual who was born in Jim Crow, South Carolina, the son of a sharecropper in poverty, picking cotton and tobacco from age 5. Yet when you ask him about systemic racism now in America, and you ask him about critical race theory and white people are oppressors and black people are victims, he'll tell you, I can't say that. And the reason he says that is because when he was deathly ill at age 5, a white family took him in and nursed him back to health for months. And then when he joined the Marine Corps, there was no DEI, there were no quotas. Like, hey, come in and get your butt kicked like everybody else. And he faced racists who didn't want him to be there, especially when he went forced reconnaissance. Our elite commandos, our warriors within the Marine Corps, these are some of the best of the best. And there were individuals where he was one of the first black guys in forced reconnaissance who were like, no, we don't want a black man here. However, the system was always on his side. And when he went through scuba training, or he was going to go through scuba training, there were individuals who said, no, we're not going to have a black man come in the pool and drown. And the system, the Marine Corps, said, you either train him or you get out of the Corps. And so he went through scuba training, and not only did he graduate, but he was the honor graduate because he's an amazing swimmer. And he says he could still beat me right now, and he probably could. But the reality is that the system was always on his side because he transcended ideological politics and false narratives to where he received a battlefield commission. He was taken from an enlisted Marine, and he was made an officer in the Marine Corps. Less than 0.05% of all Marines who served in Vietnam received such an honor. Why? Because he was that good. He was such a great leader. He was so tactically proficient that the Marine Corps, the system, recognized what a great individual he was. And so he went on to serve. And then, as you mentioned, he became the face of the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, I'll move out of the way here. This is the poster. This is the Ask a Marine poster. It literally, for 7 years, was one of the most successful campaigns the Marine Corps ever had. And Major Capers is showing his book here, and it's on the cover of his book. So he knows, look, there are racists, but the system always supported him. And this is where people have tried to get him to pick up a narrative and to sell a political ideology, which, quite frankly, it demeans who he is as an individual. Yeah. He's an American hero, and he has to be recognized as an American hero. And again, I'm 100% confident that President Trump, Pete Hegseth, and J.D. Vance, they know this, and they're going to recognize this warrior because he transcends politics.
I have one final question for the Major, and it follows what you just said, Bull. Critics are going to say, having a life that you had growing up in Jim Crow South, facing racism and disrespect the way you had throughout your life, throughout your time in our military defending our country, and now being disrespected for all these years, not getting the Medal of Honor that you deserve. Why do you still love our country so much that you talk about it in such glowing terms? I want to end today's interview with you answering that question. Why do you love America so much after all that you have given to it, when it has not necessarily, to some of us, looked like America has returned the favor to you? Major Capers, your response.
I'll pass that on to my godson, Bull. He can answer this better than I
Okay.
can.
Well,
Bull,
I
you're
appreciate that. And we've discussed this, and I've known the major for several years, and we've had sit down conversations, and time and again, the major has talked about everything that he's become to this point. He credits with his time in the Marine Corps. He credits with the opportunities provided in America. And although you can point out specific incidents, the major's peer group, it's not one race. It's literally groups from every possible race, religion, creed. He constantly embraces other individuals, and other individuals embrace him. All his warriors he served with were white, and every guy I talked to loved him to death. And moreover, Capers was willing to lay down his life for them. So I think that that's the spirit of America. And that's what makes America great, is that we have to get back to unifying our country instead of
Yes.
trying to divide it upon superficial perspectives or based upon injustices that have happened in the past, and focus, as you rightly said, let's focus on the future. And I consider the major one of my mentors, and he's educated me, and he's helped align me, and I'm grateful. It's an honor to spend time with this living legend. So anything that I can do, it's minimal compared to what he has done for our nation.
Thank you, son.
When this
Appreciate
gets
that.
done, oh, please, when this gets done, I know it's going to be standing room only. I know there's going to be limited invites, but I'm lobbying for one now, if for no other reason than to shake both of your hands in that room and just to thank you, Bull, for bringing this story, this cause, this person, this hero to my attention and to the attention of so many others, including the President and the Secretary of Defense, but also to shake your hand, Major Capers, for all that you've done for our country. It has been an honor to be able to interview you twice. I thank you. A grateful nation thanks you. And let's get this done, America. Major James Capers, David Bull Gurfein, thank you for your time.